my name is Margaret Adele, and welcome to another indie book review. Today I am reviewing Crescentville Haunting by M.N. Bennet. This is a queer YA paranormal story all about Logan, who originally was dating the super hot vampire Henry, but after getting attacked by a kind of part of Henry's world, he decides to back off from all that supernatural stuff entirely and breaks up with him. But this book shows that that might have all been for naught, as he gets attacked by a villain called the Crone and ends up being faced with the fact that he might not be all that human anymore. And as Henry fights to go back to his normal human life, he starts to wonder if there's even a normal human life to go back to. Now, right off the bat, two things. One, love the fact that this is an MLM story written by a queer man. We have talked about this before, that queer men tend to be shoved out of telling their own stories in the bookish space, and I always love to give more shout outs to the books that are actually written by the queer men. But two, the world building in this is a little bit confusing, mostly because it kind of comes up with a new system for the paranormal or supernatural creatures in this world that most books of this genre don't have. So, for example, they don't call them supernatural, they call them vices. And vices are your standards werewolves and vampires and sirens, etc. But then there are the sins. And sins are what happen when a vice eats another vice and becomes both supercharged and super evil. They're stronger, but they also have like all these ludicrous cravings. Now, when a sin bites a human, the human most of the time will turn into what's called a haunting. And the haunting appears to be zombie-esque in this world, but not entirely zombies as we know them. Their bodies are slowly decaying. However, they are still cognizant to a certain extent. Like at some point in the story, there's literally zombies playing video games, which honestly kind of sounds worse. Like they're still stuck in a decaying corpse body, and they still have like some of the cravings for blood or flesh, but they're conscious. That kind of makes it worse, right? Like, awkward. But anyway, there's also a viceling, which is what happens when someone gets bitten by a sin but doesn't turn into a haunting. It's a more rare form, and they can turn into basically anything. And then there are also saints, which are like supposedly the good guys to help fight the sins. It's a lot. And you kind of learn in the course of the story that the system as it was invented is kind of bull. As Logan has like been really close with the vampire and been over to like the vampire's house and knows them, once he learns what the humans supposedly know about the vices, and he realizes that like it's all bullshit, the humans don't actually know what they think they know because they're studying the people from afar. You find out that a lot of this is its own kind of bullshit and they don't understand most of it, but some things are true, like the fact that because Logan was bitten by the crone, he is going to turn into something. I did like the mystery of it because it wasn't just like, oh, the crone is a warlock, aka a super evil witch, therefore he is going to become a witchling. No, getting bitten just unlocks whatever you were already most likely to turn into. And so that's the mystery of what is he going to be, and it takes a while to show any kind of the signs. They don't know. And I also loved the fact that he starts hearing the crone's voice in his head, and I really like the fact that the author used a different font for the crone's voice in his head, this much bolder, darker, twisted looking font in the story. I often forget that you can just do that. Like, authors could just use other fonts if they wanted to, and I really like the idea of heightening the fear factor of the big bad whose thoughts are popping into the protagonist's head, but like in scary font. The Crone in general was a great big bad. She had all of the proper, like, everyone feared her, even the SPU, Sin Protection Unit or something like that. Like, they were iffy about her. The Vices had their little organization called the Covenant that was like, you know, Vices Council type thing. They were scared of her. Like, the story built up, this bitch is a threat so well. I loved how well they built up how threatening she was. It genuinely felt like she couldn't be beat at certain points, and that was great. Great tension building. A lot of stuff in here. There was a lot of little mysteries. Who was that girl, and why was she in that place, and like all of that. Why did the crone not try to eat him? Like, it was so good. All the little mysteries adding up to a very big thing, and obviously, I also loved the queer romance between the two because, you know, Henry and Logan, like, they never stopped caring for each other. It was just that Logan didn't want a part of that life anymore. And now that, you know, he has to turn to Henry for help in this world that he has been shoved back into, and you can really see the angst between, you know, they still have stuff to get through and there's still this giant threat over their head, but also they still really care about each other. And I love that Henry was not your stereotypical broody dark vampire, like, I'm no good for you. Like, no. He was very charming and kind of that roguish, rakish kind of charm. And I love the mechanics of the vampires in this world where their fangs can be filed down with iron, because iron is a weakness for vices. So it's one of the most, but they can pop back out at like anything, not just like bloodlust, like you know, Logan's in danger because, well, I mean, he's in danger like most of this book, and like immediately Henry's fangs pop back out because of all the big emotions. Like, I love that little bit. All of the vices are also color coded. I don't remember most of them. I did like that the vampires were orange. I feel like it could have gone with the obvious choice of red, and they didn't. Although I guess in this world, a lot more than just vampires need blood. A lot of other of the vices also need blood, so it's not just like a vampire thing. I did like the cast to a certain extent. I wish a lot of the extended cast would have gotten a little bit more time, especially the friends that Logan meets in the facility. They kind of like toss them out at the end of like, oh yeah, it's a good team, ragtag team, but like, I would have liked a little bit more relationship building between the group before we got that. But nothing too bad. Nothing really worth taking a star off for. I consider taking a star off for just the kind of confusing way that the magic system was explained. But even as I was like trying to think of a way to explain it for this video, where I literally just am sitting and talking to you, telling you how it works, it was a little confusing to do. So I had to imagine that there's just not a good way to explain it in a narrative that isn't just a little bit tedious. So I didn't really take off a star for it. I liked all of the reveals. There were a lot of nice late stage reveals, especially when the crone appeared at the late game. I liked that one. I really liked that one. That was a good one. And in general, the main character is very like lovable, and the author really managed to like split the difference between, you clearly understand why he wants this human life, right? Because I know a lot of people are like, well, why would the human character ever want to go back to their human life? Like, this dude has been literally attacked viciously, horrifically by a creature from that world. He has very good reason to never want to go back, and sins attack vices regularly. So it's not like he's safe now. It's not like, oh, now that I'm in the world, I can defend myself. Like, no, there's still big bads that will now target him because of what he is. So you understood why he would want to go back. It didn't feel like I mean, yes, it kind of did feel like an inevitability that he was going to accept himself for who he was, because it's a YA paranormal story and it's almost always going to end that way. But the journey to get there felt very valid, very realistic. You do see, I don't know what it would be an analogy for, because like usually I'd be like, oh, his parents hate vices and his dad'll go on rants. And it's like, usually that kind of thing would be an analogy for a marginalized group, but like his parents accept him for being bisexual. I mean, he is bisexual. I think Henry's gay, but Logan like states in the narrative, either way is fine with him. Or anyway, I guess I should say. But like, so they accept him for, the gay thing. but don't accept vices. So it's like, I'm not sure if it's still supposed to be an analogy, or if it's supposed to be a different kind of analogy, or if it's just supposed to be a thing. I might be reading too far into it. But regardless, you do get some dysfunctional family stuff with Logan and his parents, because his parents are also like, they kind of just want to shove him back in that normal human life, and they don't want to deal with the fact that their son may now be part of this other world. And I really, really liked how it delves into that, and how he can't necessarily just be like, oh well, screw you, bye, because that kind of thing, I think, tends to come across more in stories than IRL. Like in real life, it is seriously hard and agonizing to go non-contact with family. So the fact that he doesn't just be like, oh, you don't accept me, bye, like that also struck me as a lot more realistic. And the finale, I love me a big ending, and this felt like a big ending, and trippy fake out scenes, and again the crone felt properly big, and I liked the way Logan dealt with that one particular situation. It was a nice, proper, big ending, as I usually like to see. And in general, I liked that the book felt like a YA. We've talked about it in the bookish community before, how so much YA feels like teen characters but written for adults. And this book definitely felt like it was written for a younger audience. And that is to say, it read really quickly for me. Usually my reading speed on like an adult book is going to be like 1.5 pages per minute, and this one I think was easily 2 pages per minute. And not a bad thing. I am 30. I should be able to quickly read a book that is originally intended for 14-year-olds. I have college degrees. I should be able to read this quickly if I am reading a book at the same level as a freshman in high school. Something's gone wrong for me. But the language flowed very well. The dialogue was very realistic to teenagers. I really liked how it felt like a book meant for a YA audience. And that's great, because we don't get a lot of those in the modern bookish world, and it's aggravating. So, in general, I gave this book 5 stars. Highly recommend if you're into this kind of thing. I know everyone's always looking for more queer books to add to their pile. There was an adorable little romance. We did have some other representations. There was a side character that used they, them pronouns, other queer relationships. I'm not sure it was Kira. Kira might have been queer. I got vibes. But then again, these days I get vibes from like 70% of the characters in books I read. Regardless, highly suggest it, and in general, a great pick. Thank you so much for watching. And with nothing else to say, I hope you have a wonderful day and a marvelous tomorrow.